sharing a bit about our work.
Yeah, I'm about to speak.
This evening,
So,
and to
do you hear the
introduce
microphone?
our keynote speaker.
That's me
First,
tapping.
I want to acknowledge that my employer is a large, publicly owned financial institution. We've talked a lot about that today. We hear a lot about that in all of these conversations. And I want to acknowledge the role
What you want me to do?
banks,
You want me to plug in the boom
including
microphone?
U.S. Bank, have played in creating and sustaining the wealth gap that we are here trying to address. But I also want to share
Okay,
the
so I'm going to
intentional
unplug the
work
lavalier. We got to figure out what's
that
going on
our
with that.
group, we are a subsidiary
Okay.
of U.S. Bank, Impact Finance is a subsidiary of the bank, has been doing and will to scale solutions for Black business owners, for the Black community, to solve some of these problems that we're addressing. For Impact Finance, we invest in the community development tax credits, environmental tax credit, environmental finance tax credits, and affordable housing. And we lend and invest to the players in those same industries.
We're good.
And we have done so for over 30 years.
I don't know. Yeah.
But after the killing of Mike Brown in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, our leadership began a process of centering racial equity in all business processes and products. The equity agenda became a part of our strategic plan in 2016, and we set out on a journey to educate ourselves and to begin dismantling and rebuilding the systems that continue to reinforce the disparate access to resources and opportunities for Black and brown people. We've established new hiring practices. We've developed training programs to increase the capacity of our teams to lead authentically for racial equity. For my team specifically, in 2017, we changed, so my team, we invest in new markets and historic tax credits. We lend to CDFIs. We lend and invest in other community development financing intermediaries. And in 2017, we changed the strategy of our new markets tax credit allocatee to one that would address the racial wealth gap. And in doing so, I think we saw some real change in that space, in the types of deals that we saw, the types of borrowers that we saw. But it wasn't enough. And then COVID came, and the murder of George Floyd happened, which led many corporations, including U.S. Bank, to make very big commitments about what we would do for Black communities. And the accountability part of that conversation. We want to be held accountable for what we've committed, and we want to expand and continue to grow that. We've created programs that prioritize Black-led CDFIs, grant programs.
Yes.
Specifically, those that were historically Black-led. Brought that into our conversation.
I'm going to record.
The bank created the access commitment, which is intended to rethink our approach, our entire banking approach to serving Black communities. We've created the Access Fund, which offered grants to and debt to CDFIs who are financing women, minority-owned micro businesses, and many other programs like that. But I don't want to talk about the name programs. I want to talk about the commitment of the people that are on my team, that are in this room with you, from U.S. Bank, and what we want to do. So we want to advocate for change in the spaces where we have influence, legislatively, programmatically, to influence who receives new markets tax credit allocation. We know that that space, of all the spaces that's intended to serve communities that have been underinvested, that have been disinvested, and yet the organizations that receive the opportunity to make the choices and to receive the benefit from the program, which often is the CDEs in that program, are completely underrepresented. There is a complete lack of representation from Black and Indigenous and person of color-led CDFIs in that space, which is unreasonable, right? 69%, 63% of all New Markets dollars go to communities that are majority people of color. And yet, most of the organizations that get to pick and receive the benefit from being an allocatee in that program look like me. We want to change that. We will convene, we will disrupt, and we will support Black-led organizations in understanding their current circumstances, their needs, and building track record, and providing technical assistance with the application. We've provided to the Alliance any bit of technical opportunity that we have, information, understanding that we have done. We will provide that, we will continue to provide that, and have that available for the Alliance and its members continuously. So, this is it. This is what we're doing. We will advocate within the bank for new credit underwriting standards. That is a thing that I know Terrence, I know Jimmy, I know Philip on our team. I hope you have met all of those guys. Are going to continue to do. We will speak up when it is necessary. We will work to ensure that our staff represents the communities that we serve. We will continue to change that. We know that that is not right at this point. And we will partner with the organizations, like the Alliance and its members, to ensure that we are offering effective solutions. We don't know the answers. We believe that those that are on the ground do, and we will leverage our relationships with you to try to provide those larger financial institution solutions. So, again, if you haven't met our colleagues here, please do reach out. Reach out to me. And know that we are here and committed as partners to all of you. And now for my actual important role for the evening, to introduce our keynote speaker. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for this evening, Mr. Roland Martin. Roland is a renowned journalist, author, and commentator who has made an indelible mark on the media landscape through his insightful analysis, fearless reporting, and unwavering commitment to social justice. With over 30 years of experience in the field, Roland has been a prominent voice in television, radio, and digital media. His work has encompassed a wide range of topics, including politics, culture, race, and social issues, and he consistently uses his voice and his platform to shed light on the stories and perspectives that often go unheard. Throughout his career, Roland has received numerous accolades and recognition for his outstanding contributions to journalism and broadcasting. He has been honored with multiple awards, including the prestigious Peabody Award, and has been named one of the 150 most influential African Americans by Ebony magazine. Tonight, we have the privilege of hearing Roland Martin's unique insights, wisdom, and perspectives on the critical issues facing our society. His ability to analyze complex matters with depth and clarity, combined with his passion for social justice, makes him an exceptional speaker who inspires action and drives meaningful change. So without further ado, I invite you to join me in giving a warm round of applause as we welcome onto this stage the esteemed journalist, author, and commentator, Mr. Roland Martin.
Good, good. Meal was good? Oh, yeah. Short rib tender as hell? Am I the only one? Okay, you know, y'all know sometimes that ain't the case. So we appreciate the chefs are doing a good job. Absolutely glad to be here, glad to see everyone here. We are, you know, it's so funny whenever I travel, I do these things, and I came in, they were like, asking me, I need some help. I'm like, nah, we good. I was doing my show from 6 to 7. Normally we're live 6 to 8 on Roland Unapologetically on the Black Star Network. And so whenever I travel, people like always ask me, they said, like, where are your people? I'm like, I don't travel with people. I hate handlers. I don't need somebody to fly with me to set a camera up. I've been doing this since I was 14, so that's not a problem. I went to communications high school. So like they taught us to do this stuff early. So when we came in, about 3 or 4 people, they're like, need anything? No, you're good. And they was looking at me like I was crazy. I'm like, no, trust me, don't worry about it. And we all done. And see the beauty of not just having your own show, but the beauty of owning your own network is that you don't have to ask somebody for permission, which is why I started. When my show at TV1 ended, a lot of people were like, oh my God, you know, what are you going to do, man? You should go back to CNN, MSNBC. And I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I wasn't interested in asking some 30-year-old producer, could I please go cover some black stuff? And that's why I launched Roland Unfiltered 4.5 years ago. We'll celebrate 5 years on September 4th of this year. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, we launched the Black Star Network. We now have a total of 6 shows on the network. We have been growing exponentially. It has not been easy. It has been very difficult, if you will, especially when it comes to dealing with companies and agencies and advertising. When you look at what's happening in our industry, and I will get to a lot of this when I lay out my speech, $322 billion is going to be spent this year in advertising, and black-owned media will get 0.5 to 1%. And we're in this constant battle because corporate America, and let me be perfectly clear, corporate America and America loves black people. Some of y'all look at me like, no, let me be real clear. They love black people. They love us buying. We are some of the most loyal customers in this country when it comes to companies and products. But what then happens, you then have to ask yourself, what then is the return on investment for our loyalty? And I'm going to use that to set up what I'm talking about. And how many of y'all saw the movie American Gangster? Yeah, they did. So remember when Bumpy died, they were at the house and they were having a funeral, and Denzel was talking to Joe Morton. And he was saying a whole bunch of people in this room owe Bumpy, and then Denzel playing Frank Lucas said, I'm going to get that money. Well, that's the topic of my speech. We don't get that money. Now, anytime you're in a room that's many black people, you got to tag your text. Now, if the person next to you has no idea what tag your text means, that means you sit next to somebody who does not go to church. Anybody go to a real black church, you hear tag your text, you know what that is. And some of y'all looking like, oh no, he talked to the white people in the room. No, it's some black people in this room who no longer go to church. And you look at me like, I don't know what tag your text means. I'm confused. If you're not having a money conversation, you're not having an American conversation. And I get a kick out of folk when we have this conversation, because it's always amazing how we like to run away from the money conversation when that literally is what America is all about. I remember when I was in Chicago and I was sitting down with Frank Clark, and he was the CEO of ComEd, and he was talking about his desire to get, first of all, I think we are streaming the speech right now live on the network. That's why when I was setting up, that's what I was doing. So if you pull up your app, if you haven't downloaded the Black Star Network app, but we're actually streaming this right now. For folks, and of course, we're restreaming multiple times as well. The thing that's interesting to me when we talk about, again, money. I'm sitting with Frank, and Frank is trying to get more African American students, especially black boys, involved in science. And he says, Roland, he says, I go to these schools and they ask me, what I'm making and what I'm driving. I was like, Frank, I'm sorry, what's the problem? I said, Frank, you're doing this thing wrong. He's like, what do you mean? I said, why is it that when we go talk to black kids, we try to tell them, don't ask me about how much money I make? I said, when that's literally what the rest of America always talks about. I said, we have shows at the time, MTV Cribs, and you now with social media, you look at the houses and the vacations and the watches and the jewelry. I said, Frank, I don't understand why are you running away from a way to connect with a new generation? He said, what do you mean? I said, okay, Frank. I said, the next time you go to a school, I want you to tell them to have all of the students assembled outside. He said, why? I said, Frank, you have a chauffeur. I need you to pull up in your chauffeur-driven car and have them watch a dude get out and open your door. I don't need you to wear your best suit. I need you to wear your Rolex. I said, and then I want you to come armed with photos and videos of the cars you own and the house you live in. I said, Frank, you live in a $5 million, you live in a $3 million house in the suburbs of Chicago. I said, your salary, you're a publicly traded company, your salary is public, you're making a base salary of $4 million. I said, and at a certain point during the assembly, a student is going to ask you, Mr. Clark, how much money do you make? And I want you to say $4 million. I said, Frank, at that point, every student is going to be like, how the hell do you make $4 million? I said, at that point, they will be on the edge of their seat trying to figure out how is this black man I ain't never heard of making $4 million a year. And he looked at me and he said, really? I said, yes. I said, you then can explain to them this is what you need to do to get to the position that I'm in. I said, you're running away from the thing that everybody else in this country talks about. I said, it's money. And the reality is that when we talk about African Americans, it is the one thing that we also historically have run away from and actually have allowed others to set an agenda. First of all, it's dark in here. You got to turn the lights up. It's like a club in here. I need to see people. It's like Club Clearwater. I'm just saying. It's like a little dark in here. I know the people on the video, on the screen going, damn, it's dark in here. It's always happening. When you look at the top issues, they turn them all the way up. We black, we need light. If you ask the average African American the top issues, money likely will not be in the top 5. We'll say education, we'll say mass incarceration, we'll say criminal justice reform, we'll say housing, but we will not say money. Even though when you look at every major fundamental issue in this country, there's a direct correlation to lack of money, lack of resources, and the actual condition that our community is in. Take your pick: education, health, crime. You go down the line. John Hope Bryant, founder of Operation Hope, says this all the time. He says, you've never seen a riot in a neighborhood where the credit score is 700 or higher. It's a money conversation. And what should be happening now is a real reset, or what I always say, John likes to say Black America needs a reboot. I actually use the phrase, there needs to be a massive reprogramming in Black America in terms of how we actually confront this very issue. Dr. King understood that. One of the things that we have allowed white America to treat Dr. King like some civil rights bobblehead mascot who loved everybody, who wanted everybody to get along, and all he cared about was civil rights, which is a fundamental lie. Because if you actually take time to read beyond 2 speeches, my God, I cannot stand when we do I Have a Dream and the Mountaintop speech, when the I Have a Dream speech was a radical economic speech. And if most of us actually ignore the final 2 minutes of the Mountaintop speech, we'll realize there was a 43-minute and 16-second economic speech that he actually gave the night before he was assassinated. Because he understood the issue for us was money. And we now are in a world that I call the third Reconstruction. That the first 2 Reconstructions failed because it dealt with every other issue except money. The first Reconstruction, the 3 most important things that happened, 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, they're called the Reconstruction Amendments. Reconstruction lasts 10, 12 years. You did not have Sherman's order, 40 acres and a mule. The Freedmen's Bank actually failed because Lincoln gets assassinated. And you did not have a focus on economics of the freed folks who were of African descent, who were formerly enslaved. Then you go to your second Reconstruction, really begins with Brown versus Board of Education, Emmett Till being lynched, Montgomery bus boycott. Now what's interesting about that, we showed the power of black retrenchment with Montgomery, because we broke them economically by not getting on the bus for 382 days. But if you look at all of the advancements, Voting Rights Act, Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, all those were legislative, they were not financial. And so the death of George Floyd really represented the third Reconstruction. And in the early days, I was saying on my show, on every platform, we cannot allow this moment to solely be a moment. It must be transformed into an economic movement. And it is one that needs to last at a bare minimum 20 years. Because if you go back in our history, you will realize that there has been no sustained period of economic advancement for African Americans that's lasted more than a decade. Take your pick. Go back to Reconstruction. Then, of course, you have the election of 1876, the Great Compromise of 1877, ushers in 92 years of Jim Crow. Then when you go through Jim Crow, and when you go, even if you go through the years of Bill Clinton, in terms of the housing, getting close to 50%, and all of a sudden, what happens in 2008 with the home foreclosure crisis, 53% of black wealth wiped out because of the home foreclosure crisis. So what we had starts and stops, starts and stops, starts and stops. Not a sustained period of at least 20 years. We've never actually had that. And so it's a constant repeat. We go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, we go up, we go down, and it's not been consistent. And so here you have this moment where all of a sudden, anywhere I've seen the pledges go from 50 billion to 300 billion actually being pledged. And while this was happening, others were saying, we must ensure that there is massive accountability every step of the way. Because the reality is, most of that was mostly press releases. Those were social media posts. I was in a meeting with General Motors when we were going after them for their lack of black advertising. Those of us in black-owned media, we forced them to make their changes because they were doing 1%. And then we started hitting other companies and began to realize there's a whole bunch of folk who were paying lip service, but their market share was real high among black people. They literally only spending 0.2, 0.5, 1%. And so I was on the call with their then CMO, Deborah Wall, and I said, let me explain something to y'all. I don't applaud nobody for press releases. I will only give you credit for direct deposits. Now, I'm saying that because that has to be the starting point for every single one of us. We have got to stop rewarding people just because they bought a table. We've got to stop rewarding people because they actually showed up at our event. No, I am only going to praise somebody for consistent direct deposits for our institutions. Otherwise, all we are doing is literally giving away all the leverage, influence that we have, and what do we actually get out of it? I've said to our civil rights organizations, there should not, and I said, this is no disrespect to the NAACP, to NAN, to the National Urban League, but no civil rights organization should be leading any economic conversation. They should be supportive. They should be advancing. But if you ain't never run a business, how you going to lead a conversation about business? Now, I know some of you, so let me be real clear with y'all. Some of y'all right now, y'all like, oh, damn. Some of y'all like real uncomfortable right now, and guess what? That ain't my problem. I've never had a problem making folk feel uncomfortable because sometimes, actually, I'll say this, not many times, we spend too much time being so comfortable that what we're looking for is we're looking for affirmation. And instead, what we should be seeing is a challenge for us to actually go higher. And so you look at what's happening and understand how my thought process is. When I got off the plane today, I texted, actually before I got on the plane, I texted my assistant, I said, the company that's picking me up, is that a black-owned transportation company? She said, let me check. She hit me back, she said no. I said, okay. Understand, I am intentional in my blackness. I am intentional to the point I didn't go, who are we utilizing? Who are we supporting? Saturday, I go to Houston tomorrow. I'm having a Juneteenth Black Economic event. I'm born and raised in Houston. We've been celebrating Juneteenth all my life. It's new to a whole bunch of folk. And we're trying to show black people around the country how to actually celebrate Juneteenth, because Juneteenth was never about barbecues and parties. We had voter registration drives. We had economic conversations. That's what it was always about. It was this constant quest for freedom. And so we're having the event at the Power Center, which is black owned. We have black caterers doing the event. All our vendors are black. See, we can't talk about black economic empowerment if we don't practice it. So it means being intentional. And so I talk about being intentional. Like, I appreciate companies when they say, well, this is all things that we're providing. But see, I have to go a little bit deeper. See, I have to challenge every single company in here. I need you to go back and then ask a separate set of questions. I need you to go back and say, how much money does our company spend every year on catering, and do we have any black caterers? How much money are we spending on professional services, outside law firms, outside accounting firms, and are any of them black? Are we using any outside PR companies? Are we utilizing any audiovisual companies? Are we using event organizers? What's our black-owned media spend? What I'm talking about is having a much more broader black economic ecosystem, because right now what's happening is we're operating in these individual silos. And so you got your black CDFIs over here, you got your black folks who are in private equity, you got black folks over here fighting with black-owned media, and then all the other areas. But what you do not have is, you do not have a much more broader fight to expand the black economic pie. So when I hear the phrase, I hear all the time, we need access to capital. Let me be perfectly clear. I launched my show September 4th, 2018. The day I launched my show, I was in the top percentile of black-owned businesses. Why? Because if you look at pre-COVID numbers, we had 2.6 million black-owned businesses, 2.5 million had one employee. Doing an average revenue of $54,000. When we had 1.9 million black-owned businesses, they were doing an average revenue of $110,000. So we actually added 700,000 more black-owned businesses, but the revenue was cut in half. So we September 4, 2018, 7 employees. So already, we are way above everybody else. By year 3, we hit $3 million in revenue. 95% of black-owned businesses do $5 million revenue or less. And so, I'm thinking much broader in terms of how do we change the whole ecosystem, because it can't just be we have Robert Smith, Oprah, Michael Jordan, when our focus should be how are we creating an additional 250,000 multi-millionaires? And not just getting hyped and celebrating because one person became a billionaire. And we then have to also be challenging them as well in terms of how are you also supporting the black economic ecosystem? And I don't mean just with gifts to a college. That's philanthropy. I'm talking about investment. We have survived on corporate and white philanthropy when I'm talking about investment. But see, again, when I hear, access to capital, let me be clear. I have no debt. Built the company, use my own money. I owe nobody, have no partners. I don't need a line of credit. I need contracts. If I sign a $2 million advertising deal with 5 companies, that's $10 million. I don't need a loan. That money pays for everything. So what happens is we are allowing ourselves to also get caught in the wrong conversations. We're letting people say, oh no, I think the fund of the problem for African Americans is access to capital. No. We good on the capital. I need access to contracts. Because if I access to contracts, I got access to capital. And now I just need working capital because you can't, as a matter of fact, let's talk about you changing your 180-day payment schedule. One of the things that we have been fighting with companies saying, look, y'all paying 180 days, y'all need to bring that down to 30 and 60 for black-owned media. And we've been successful in doing that with some of them. So if we're talking about how are we going to redefine black America, we have to be thinking much bigger and broader and deeper than what we're doing right now, because what you're already seeing, and I appreciate every corporation that's here, but what you're seeing right now is a massive pullback, which is no shock because that's also American history. Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, Reconstruction Amendments, about 6 or 7 years in, America said, hey, we've done enough of these former slaves. Can we just move on from this stuff? So even though Reconstruction lasted 10, 12 years, you study the history, America about 5, 6 years in, like, all right, we about tired of doing stuff. Now, remind you, it was 243 years of slavery. They got tired after 5 years. 243 years of free labor. They got tired. We done enough. Again, 64 Voting Rights, Civil Rights Act, 65 Voting Rights Act, 68 Fair Housing Act. Folks were like, all right, we good. Y'all got enough. Without realizing, no, it was a whole lot more after that. And so where we should be right now, in every facet of our community, we should be thinking much differently and challenging corporate America in a much more deeper way. If we're spending $1.5 to $1.6 trillion, I need to say, see, what are we getting back? And I'm not talking about grants and scholarships. We go to some of the meetings with companies, and this is pretty funny. We go to the meeting, and they'll have their diversity person, and then they'll have the foundation person. Now, y'all need to understand something. I ain't scared to call nobody out. I done called Oprah out. I called Obama out. I hit anybody. We're in a meeting, and I said, when y'all meet with Disney, is your foundation person here? They look at me up there, I'm like, well, if Disney don't meet with your foundation person, I'm not meeting with your foundation person. So some of y'all look at me like, dude, what's the problem? they only bring the foundation person when they meet with black folk. Because the foundation person is there to tell us all the stuff they doing for black people. I ain't having a foundation conversation. I'm having a business conversation. They don't control the advertising budget. Where the hell is your CMO? I don't talk to your chief marketing officer. I don't talk to your DEI person. No disrespect to anybody who's in DEI. That's a bullshit job. I'm sorry. What's the budget of a DEI person? How many staff was under the control? Do they have any P&L responsibility? Do they report to the CEO? So why we sitting here tripping and why y'all nervous as hell because I called it what it is? It's a appropriate position. And so if I am there having a business conversation, I don't need the DEI person. I need the person who has a P&L responsibility over that unit because that person's job is directly tied to the bottom line of the company, and that person is in a decision-making position. So don't send me the person who's there for window dressing. And I said to DEI folk, you need to be walking in negotiating in a much different way. I know a sister who a company came after, major company came after her for DEI. She said, and I'm talking about major company. She said, create a $1 billion fund and give me the authority to give it to who I want to give it to. They were like, oh, hell no. She says, well, I'm not coming. Because she understood what the job is about. And then over 75% of all DEI positions are white. So you're trying to say you want to increase diversity, but you're hiring people who look like you. Wake up. So what I'm laying out here is we have to be operating and thinking in a totally different way if we're going to actually change the economics of our community. Frankly, we're thinking way too small. Many of us are going into places and we're talking about $2, $3, $5, $10 million. When other folks are walking into rooms and the minimum ask is $250 million. I was talking to Steve Perry, and he met with a Wall Street guy for his charter school, and he said Steve was requesting $500,000, and so he said, Roland, I was apologizing by asking for $500,000. And the guy said, Steve, let me ask you a question. He said, when Eva Moskowitz met with us, and she asked what she needed, this is what she needed to start the Success Charter School. He said, how much do you think she asked for? And Steve was thinking, I asked for $500,000, so Eva probably asked about $3-4 million. He said, no. She walked in and said, I need $50 million. The first time. He just sat there and his mouth wide open. If we are going to truly change the economic paradigm of Black America, it is going to take our Black organizations whose job is to drive an economic agenda to not live in silos, but to also partner and link with one another and then begin to make a series of demands that are much higher than we've done thus far. And then once we then do that, make it perfectly clear that there is going to be a response if we get the wrong answer. Again, some of y'all looking like, damn, this dude really radical. No, I'm not. Because this is called Operation Push. This is called Operation Breadbasket. You live in Philadelphia. There's a guy named Reverend Leon Sullivan. Who knows Reverend Leon Sullivan? Don't be scared to raise your hand. I ain't gonna bite you to raise your hand. Reverend Leon Sullivan was a bad brother. Reverend Leon Sullivan was the one who was linking Black businesses on the continent of Africa and was having his annual conference. It was Reverend Leon Sullivan who created the Operation Breadbasket concept. He told Dr. King about it. King said, come to Atlanta, present to the SCLC, and he did. He said, we're adopting it, and we're going to call it Operation Breadbasket. It is arguably the most important and successful initiative that Dr. King ever was involved in, because what Operation Breadbasket did was that it challenged corporate America challenged bridge companies, they challenged department stores, they challenged grocery stores to put black products on their shelves. But they didn't just do that. Get Martin Dent's book on Operation Breadbasket, 1960 to 1966, 1971, as DEPPE. He was a white pastor. He was on the planning committee. What they did is they would go in and they would say, one, when they negotiated, they didn't just want jobs. They just want senior jobs. They wanted contracts going to black-owned businesses. They wanted black products on the shelves. They also wanted money from the company placed into black banks. Then a multi-pronged approach when they went and dealt with companies, and when the companies said, we ain't dealing with y'all, they said, cool, we're going to go back and inform our constituents, inform our parishioners, and then they launched picket lines at a certain number of stores, and they got their attention real quick. What we have done in our nice, wonderful 21st century, highly educated, highfalutin, high degrees, well-dressed as black folk, we have forgot what the hell a picket line is. We have forgot what pressure is. We have forgot to understand there's nothing that black folk have ever gotten in this country that we did not get having to kick somebody's behind over. If you can show me something that we got stuff nice, take your time and let me know. I mean, just show me. But what we've done is we've taken this soft approach. But no, we can do the right thing and say the right thing and stick to the door slammed in our face, and then now what? And so every single one of you, you are here representing a constituency. You're representing a constituency that you have not tapped into to actually change the economic dynamics of your community. Leaving here, you should say, how do I leave here and go back and I'm educating not just my organization, not just my CDFI, but how am I actually educating multiple neighborhoods on how we need to be going after certain, yes, banks, energy companies, pharmaceutical companies, and down the line, because we are driving the bottom line of many of those companies. There's a product, my guys were at an event, there's a certain product that this company said, we black people represent 80% of the folks who buy the product. It is a multi-billion-dollar product, and we drive 80%. And I've never seen one of their ads on black-owned radio, on black television, or in a black newspaper. Yet we represent 80% of their buyers. You start, I had a conversation with an automotive company. I said, let me be real clear. I don't have to call for a massive boycott. If I knock off 1% of your market share, all y'all gonna lose your jobs. They were like, what the hell? Because see, understand, I got 4 million social media followers. I will weaponize my followers to take somebody out. Because I'm not interested in black folks remaining broke. The only way this thing changes is if this generation of African Americans utilizes the power that we have, the power that our ancestors have provided for us. They provided us the blueprint and the map. The question is, are we willing to use it? A lot of us are even afraid to even post something on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok saying, well, I want to make somebody mad. Yet we continue to remain broke. That has to change. You either have to live your slogan, or let me be real clear, stop coming up with slogans that say unapologetically and using it in a sentence. We've got to make a decision. Are we going to operate unapologetically? Or are we going to say it because it looks cute as a slogan? That's the question that we are left with. Because right now, our community is literally about to walk into a massive battle. I wrote in my book, White Fear, and it's real. Y'all, this anti-CRT stuff, every group except white America, a majority said yes. This was right before Obama was inaugurated. 2016, September 2016. Now the poll was taken. Are you optimistic about the future of America economically for the next 10 years? Black people, lowest wealth, highest optimism. Now, anybody should be pissed is the brokest folk. Latinos, second lowest wealth, second highest optimism. White America, highest wealth, lowest optimism. Let me be perfectly clear to every CDFI CEO. You are next. If you think the attacks on CRT is not coming your way, you are dead wrong. What just happened to Bud Light? What is happening to Target? Now you're seeing the attacks on DEI. Now you're about to see a fierce unleashing against initiatives that she laid out, others have laid out at this conference. I'm telling you, it's coming. It's been coming. Because there's a fear that we somehow are getting something no one else is getting. Under Trump, $25 billion went to, for the most part, 98% white farmers. Congress passes a bill for $5 billion to go to black and Hispanic farmers, and the moment it passed, Stephen Miller, that white supremacist, they filed a lawsuit, and it's been 2 years, and not a single black farmer has been able to access the dollar because of the lawsuit.
Roland, what's CRT?
Critical race theory. I'm telling you, they're coming after every, let me just say this slowly. They're coming after every corporate initiative that directly impacts black and brown communities. It's coming. And many of us, and yes, it's already here. So I need every person in this room to understand you are going to have to fortify yourself for a battle that you never was expecting. Because what they're going to do, I'm just going to tell you right now, and again, you have wonderful corporate partners here, but they're going to go after their boards of directors. They're going to use shareholder power. They're going to then begin to say, that's unfair. Why are you helping them? And not us. Now, we can sit and lay the numbers out. And many of us, they're going to say, well, I don't understand what's going on. Because by 2043, America will be no longer a majority white country. I have to paint these things in stark terms because it is happening before our very eyes. As I travel this country speaking to groups all across the country, it's a whole bunch of people. Reminds me of that scene from Scandal when Papa Pope said, you running around the field like it's daisies and bombs are going up all around you. That's what many of us are doing. What we have to be doing right now is aligning ourselves with other organizations and preparing ourselves to fight for what we've already gotten thus far. I'm not even talking about what's going to be coming down the pipeline in the future. Because the future survival of our community is at stake. Pick a city and it's happening. I'm tired of having gentrification conversations. If we know the damn land is for sale, let's buy it. I'm tired of us having conversations about, man, if only I could get some help building a business. Well, if more of us actually show up, we can actually support and invest in somebody's business. The opportunity that we have is an enormous opportunity. And every decision that you make today, I need you to understand, you're not making that decision for you. Every battle that I fight every day has nothing to do with me and my company. It has to do with my 9 nieces and 4 nephews. It has to do with their children that have yet to be born. Because we have to understand that if we are going to change the economic paradigm of this country, this generation of African Americans has to have the same guts and tenacity as folk who came before us. And it would be a shame 30, 40, 50 years from now, and Black America is still quoting Fannie Lou Hamer. If they're still quoting Constance Motley, if they're still quoting Diane Nash and Septima Clark, if they're still quoting Ralph Abernathy and still quoting Andrew Young and Reverend Jackson, no. What should be happening, there should be a new generation of warriors who are on the battlefield fighting on behalf of African Americans, because, folks, we have been prepared for the opportunity, yet too many of us have shied away from it because we think we don't really have to do that stuff anymore. When we went out to CNN, when I was on the board of the National Association of Black Journalists, I called Bernard Shaw, who passed away last year, and I said, Bernie, you spoke at our convention in Vegas, and I want to use a clip. This is what Bernard Shaw said to me. He said, Roland, every generation has its time. It's now your time. It's now your turn. Not a single one of us, no matter what our age is, can shy away from this fight and this battle that we are engaged in. What this moment requires, it requires some of the smartest, most advanced, most well-funded African Americans in the history of our country to use its collective power to change the future economics of our community. If you were doing $20 million deals, go at home and challenge folks and say, when are we going to start doing $200 million deals? And if you're doing $100 million deals, then say, when are we going to push to do $1 billion deals? And I am not interested in anybody saying, oh man, this stuff takes time. I had one of our black media folks say, oh, these things take time. I said, bro, your ass 75. Every day over 72 is a bonus day for you. I am 54 years old. I have no desire for anybody saying these things take time. We have waited long enough for stuff to happen. There has to be a fierce urgency, and we must push and push and push, and must be willing to challenge, willing to shout, willing to fight, willing to get in somebody's face. We'll do the stuff nice, but as they say, proud Mary, hey, we like it nice and rough. Sometimes you got to go there. So maybe if this generation of Black America had a little bit more gangster in it, maybe if we were not as educated as we are now, because it's amazing how the previous generation didn't have all our degrees, but they sure as hell had something else inside of them, but they were unwilling to accept the status quo. And every single one of us should leave here and say, what is it that I am willing and prepared to do to change this? So when you come back to this conference next year, there should be an accounting as to what changed from the previous year to the next year. Because if any person in this room comes back to this conference next year the same way you are now, all you have done is wasted everybody's time. You must change, you must challenge, and you must fight. And again, as my fat brother Werner Woodson-Tandy said, he was an alpha. He said, we will fight until hell freezes over, and then we will fight on the ice.
the formal program tonight. Staff did a great job today. Can we give them all a round of applause? I'm not sure who helped out with the remarks, but they prepared beautiful remarks for me tonight. I sat there and listened to Roland, I'm like, woo. So as we transition into our evening of dancing and socializing, let's carry these sentiments of celebration and unity into our interactions. Let's rejoice in our accomplishments, but also use this time to forge deeper connections, learn from each other, and continue strengthening our collective resolve. In the spirit of camaraderie, let's carry this energy of this evening forward, fueling our work in the days, months, and years ahead. We are a force for change, and together we will continue to make strides in our shared goals. Now let's transition to a more lighter program tonight. We've got some music coming on. Don't forget the words we got, but let's have a good time. Thank you all. See you next year.